What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Watch It in Action. I'm BouseFeenux, and today we're going to be taking a look at Valkyr. So Valkyr is a very melee-focused Warframe who has a couple of really nice attributes, among those being that she has the highest armor base in the game. Now, Chroma can get more damage reduction with certain builds, but as far as armor goes and stats, she's got the highest in the game. So my Valkyr might look a little different than yours. I'm using the Gersimi skin, which was recently released. I think it looks really cool. It's kind of the pre-Corpus skin, so if any of you were curious about that, that's kind of the skin that I'm using here, along with the helmet that comes with it. But basically, with Valkyr, there's a couple different builds you can go for. There's one build, which is what this one is based off of, and it's more focused around Warcry. But the way that I've built this, it kind of makes all of her abilities viable, and I'll show you kind of how to use them, but our main focus here is going to be on Warcry, so let's take a look at the builds and some of the mods that I've chosen for this. So right here, I've chosen Steel Charge. You can format this out for a Corrosive Projection, so that would be a dash aura, or a dash polarity there. A lot of people prefer that because at higher levels, as powerful as Valkyr is, melee damage is still going to fall off against heavily armored targets. It's just the way things are in this game. So a 4x corrosive projection party is pretty much the only way you're going to survive at like level 90 plus or something like that. Because after a certain point, you're just going to stop doing damage. And it kind of sucks, but I mean, that's just the way the game works. So if you want to throw another Forma on, I've got two. You could throw a third one on, Forma this Aura slot here, and change it to a dash pull. But right now I'm just using Steel Charge. It gives us that extra melee damage, and that's pretty nice. So as far as the other mods here, the big one that I want you guys to take a look at here is the Eternal War Augment. And this is kind of what makes the whole build work. So essentially how this works is, War is a skill that when cast, basically it increases your melee speed and the melee speed of your allies, hostages from rescue missions, anything like that, any kind of ally in your team. It even works for Spectres too. So the way this works, War is basically a duration skill, so it ticks down. It's not a toggled skill. And every kill you get while War is active increases the duration of it for 2 seconds for each melee kill you get. So that's pretty nice. If you're constantly killing stuff, your War skill is going to be up, and you're gonna keep having that skill, and it's gonna be, you know, really efficient because you don't have to recast it. Now this is a problem at higher levels because things get harder and harder to kill and take a longer time to kill, which is why I have allowed us to kind of use Hysteria. And when we take a look at the abilities here in a second, we'll show you how that works. But Rage is another important mod that we're going to be using here, and I've used this on some of my other builds, and I typically use this on melee-focused frames, because a lot of them have toggled abilities that deal with a melee weapon, like Excalibur has it, Wukong has it. We'll take a look at Wukong here later. But basically how this mod works is 40% of the damage you take on your health, not on your shields, but on your health, is actually converted to energy. And we have Vitality and Steel Fiber to give us a lot of damage resistance, so we can take damage to our health, restore our energy, and get back in the fight. So I am using Prime Continuity and Prime Flow. You can use the regular versions of these, just regular flow and regular continuity if you need to, as well as Blind Rage for my power strength here. Because efficiency doesn't really matter a whole lot with this build. Even if we do have to use Hysteria for a while, the duration is going to take care of us for Hysteria because it's a toggled ability. So that's pretty much the mod section. Let's take a look at the abilities here real quick. Her first one here is Ripline, and this is pretty interesting because this can also be used as a damaging ability, and it's also a mobility tool as well. It's a combo skill, kind of like Atlas's Landslide or Rhino's Charge, where if you cast it in succession, it costs less. It has more efficiency if you combo it. It's an okay ability. You can actually use this on your buddies too. So if you use Ripline on your friends, it'll pull them. You know, some people just use it to troll. I don't really think it has any real use for that, but this is a cool skill to get you out of trouble if you need to get away from some enemies really quickly. But I mean, with the addition of bullet jumping now, I feel like this skill isn't really that useful. I don't use it a whole lot, but Warcry is, like I said before, this is the skill that the whole build is kind of built around, and the cool thing about this is it has a lot of utility. Like, you don't have to just use a melee weapon while you're doing this. It works with Hysteria, and like I said before, it works on your allies. So Spectres, rescue targets, friends, anything like that. If they're near you when you cast this, it will basically affect them as well. So here's the breakdown of how it works. It gives you an armor increase of 95%, and that's based on power strength. Here's the power duration. We have 22 seconds, so that's plenty long enough to start killing some enemies and get that up even higher. Power range, this is basically how far away it'll affect your teammates and how much it'll slow your enemies, because this power also slows your enemies down, and that's also with power strength as well. So the more power strength you have, the slower the enemies will be, and that goes all the way up to 75%. So you can slow enemies by 75% when you cast this ability, but we don't need a whole lot of power strength with this build because we'd have to sacrifice some other attributes, so I've kind of left that one out. And then our speed increase here gives you a 95% melee speed increase, which is really nice. Really, really nice. And if you combine Valkyr with Volt, and Volt casts his speed ability, that's going to give you even more speed, make you even more dexterous. So that's a pretty devastating combo in terms of frame synergy. Paralysis here, this is a very short range ability at 10 meters. And essentially what this does is it uses your shield, and it'll take a portion of your shield and deal damage to enemies and knock them back. The damage is pretty minimal with this. You're not going to see a whole lot of damage with this. It's not going to be very impressive. But the one thing I do want you to note with this skill is it actually opens enemies up to finishers. So it stuns them, it opens them up to finishers, and finishers ignore armor, which is fantastic for melee. So this allows you to use pretty much any melee weapon to great effect against highly armored targets, because you're going to be doing a finisher on them. They'll have no armor. So this is a skill to use if you get in trouble, and like I said, it's very short range, and we'll see that here in a second. Hysteria is her last skill and ultimate ability. Essentially what happens with this is a toggled skill, and whenever you use it, Valkyr is going to sprout these claws on her hands, and those claws are used to attack. Now, this is interesting because this doesn't take on the stats of your melee weapon, but it takes on the mods that you have equipped. So if you have Life Strike or Berserker or anything like that, it'll take those mods into account, and if you toggle with, or if you channel with this ability active, you'll gain your health back if you're using Life Strike, etc. If you have channeling mods or whatever, those will be taken into consideration when using this ability. But this works with Warcry, so you can attack really fast, and then if you stack Berserker on top of that, gives you really, really fast attack speed, does a ton of damage. And the cool thing about this is its damage is equal parts impact, puncture, and slash. So it does all the physical stats equally. But let's take a look at how this build actually plays real quick here. I am actually using, the last thing I want to talk about real quick before I forget is the melee weapon of choice. So you can use pretty much any melee weapon you want, and any of them are going to be really impressive. I prefer using something that I can use Tempo Royale on, just because of the sheer crowd control capabilities. Tempo Royale has a lot of knockdown, and you can send enemies flying, it's good crowd control, and, these big heavy blade weapons, they have a lot of range, they have a lot of strength, they're usually really powerful, and with Eternal War and stuff like that, our melee speed is going to be so fast that the slowness of these big heavy weapons isn't even going to matter. It's going to be so fast anyway that it doesn't matter. So you can use War, you can use Sendo Prime. Sendo Prime was the one a lot of people were using for a really long time until the War came out. So if you don't have War, Sendo Prime is fine. Any sword, any high damaging melee weapon is going to be good. Jack-Tag is really impressive. So really, whatever your favorite melee weapon is, just strap it on and go to town. But essentially, that's pretty much it. You can check out those builds on the website here, like especially the Sendo Prime. That one's actually linked in the website page, but for this build. But anyway, let's throw in some enemies here real quick, and I'll show you how these builds work. So we're just going to use some Corrupted Butchers right now to kind of show you how fast we can get. So stack up on energy, and the first thing you want to do is you want to cast War. So we're going to get next to these guys and do this, so I can show you how much it slows them. So get over here, we'll cast this, and you'll see they have like a little halo around them, or a little aura. See how slow they are? And now we're going to go to town. And this is War with War, essentially, is what we're doing here. You can see how fast and devastating the attack speed is. It's just ridiculous. And then Berserker, I have Berserker on this War too, with a crit build. That's going to give us even more speed, because those things stack. Now, some of her other abilities, like the Paralysis, that's going to stun this guy, open him up to finishers, which is going to do massive damage. Those finishers are going to be ridiculous. So if you get near enemies and they're wailing on you, don't be afraid to throw down a Paralysis and, get some stuns in there. Now, the last skill here, I don't think I left any enemies alive, so we're going to spawn some more real quick, but I want to show you how Hysteria works. So Hysteria is something that if you're ever in a tight spot, and, like these guys are going to be really tough, these heavy corrupted gunners, we're not going to be able to kill them with just a regular melee weapon. And I'll show you. we're pretty much just going to be able to knock them down. This is why Tempo Royale is really good, because it's going to allow us to just push these guys around. Even though they're huge and big and scary, they have a lot of armor, they have a lot of health, and Corrosive Projection is going to be the way to take these guys down. We don't really have to worry about them because we have the Hysteria. So we go into Hysteria, and Hysteria makes you pretty much invulnerable. You know, notice that Hysteria thing up there at the top right-hand corner next to my health bar. As that ticks up, that's actually damage I'm taking being stored. And if you toggle Hysteria off when you're next to enemies, that damage will be dealt out. 20% of that damage you stored up will be dealt out to you in the form of impact damage. Now, this is kind of scary if you let it tick too high, because it can hurt you pretty bad. But the fortunate thing is that damage is impact damage, which is really ineffective against armor. And armor is something that Valkyr has a ton of, so we'll show you how that works here in a second. Let me go ahead and toggle this off. So it only dropped us down to about 400 health, and thankfully we can get that health back, because for two reasons. 5% of the damage you're going to be doing with Hysteria is going to be channeled into health. And we have Life Strike on our weapon, so when we channel Hysteria, like this, we can actually get that lost health back. So this is a very self-sufficient build, especially with Rage. We could take a little bit of damage, get some of our energy back, hopefully not die. There we go. And then we instantly heal ourselves again. So that Rage is going to be very important. And the Hysteria, I mean, you can use that as much as you want, but I would honestly only use it to get you out of trouble if you run into a group of heavy gunners or bombards or something like that, because it's going to allow you to tear through their armor because of the puncture, impact, and slash that it does equally. So, and, you know, it's a good chance for you to get your health back up, maybe stun some enemies, get out of trouble. Another quick thing is her moveset also changes a little bit, like the way she moves, her parkour. She does, like, flips and stuff like that. But yeah, really interesting frame, a lot of fun to play, very powerful. Has a little bit of trouble scaling into late game, but, I mean, with the right group setup, you can do really well with Valkyr. You really can't go wrong playing her in just about any mission where DPS is required, so, you know, she's really fun to play in survivals, defense missions, anything like that. Anything where you need a lot of damage, a lot of fast-moving melee damage, something like that. And, you know, her melee speed buff is going to be appreciated by your buddies. But really, just a recap, throw on your War Cry. If you get in trouble, make sure you're casting Paralysis to do those finishers on enemies to ignore armor. And then if you're really in trouble, throw down your Hysteria, gain all your health back, become invincible, and make sure you deactivate it away from enemies, and you'll be good to go. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I hope you found it really helpful. Maybe you learned something about Valkyrie that you didn't already know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys at the next video.